we're not very keen on being taxed to do things. And in a sense, in part, what I would say to you, Tom, is how I characterize it. At the end of the day, what we would really like to happen is we would really like the government to change the structure of the market within which we live our lives and regulate it as necessary and help us out with the costs of adaptation when necessary so that we can carry on living our lives, but in a manner that is consistent with climate change.
Well, I do want to dig into some of that, but part of that, it seems to me, Liz, is a possible failure from journalism maybe, but also from politicians to explain why you, the public, need to engage in this, and it can't all be done on your behalf. What do you think, Liz?
I don't think you'll get an explanation from people who don't believe in the need to do stuff in the first place.
But hasn't John suggested that there is a broad sympathy with the idea of the need?
I think there is. I think.
Go on, John.
Most people are concerned about climate change. Okay, the argument. The truth is, the argument we're now at is not really an argument about whether or not climate change is a problem. There is widespread acceptance as a problem. What there is an argument about is how we deal with it.
Yeah, sure.
How do we get there? And in particular, we shouldn't be surprised at this because, in a sense, part of the argument is between those of us who believe that the market will be able to provide a solution, and those of us who believe that the state are going to have to intervene in order to provide a solution. And that therefore means inevitably the debate about how we deal with climate change begins to map on some of our broader, much more traditional political divisions between those who are inclined to the Conservative Party and those who are inclined towards Labour.
Sorry, we cut off Liz rather prematurely there. Liz.
Yeah, my point was that you've got climate change skeptics running newspapers who will not explain to people what needs to be done because they're still saying, even though the wider public accepts that it's an issue, they're still saying, well, look, we have hot weather and cold weather, it comes and it goes, look at this. We actually had a situation where you had those fires in Rhodes at the same time as Sunak was announcing his retreat from eco rules and the net zero targets, the 2030 targets.
Yeah.
They were on the same day. You actually had pictures of families fleeing fires against a headline that said, we're going to cut back on our net zero targeting. They're not joining the dots. So they're certainly not going to explain what needs to be done because, as John said, people don't want to be taxed. They think it's terrible. But green taxes, we can't afford green taxes. It's as though, sort of let the next generation pay.
John, I wanted to come in on something because up to a point, if you'll forgive me, there's a little bit of statement of the obvious that people like carrots but not sticks when it comes to this survey work. And I just kind of wonder if there is a sort of an issue here of whether to what extent they've been kind of explained. Do you think explanation or understanding the context does help to shift those numbers, or is that just wishful thinking from climate journalists like me?
Yeah, I think you need to understand as a climate change journalist is that point one is concern about the climate goes alongside concern about the costs. And I suppose if I were to say what is the bit of the argument that so far you've not won, which that is the side of the argument that says, well, actually, if we do adapt our economy to a green net zero environment, then actually this will be good for economic growth and will be good for living standards. And actually, in the long run, we will benefit. At the moment, if you ask people, whether or not think we're going to, people are going to be better off or worse off if indeed we do adapt the economy to a green environment, they are more likely to think that the costs will exceed the benefits, even though they accept that if we don't adapt in the long run, there will also be a cost. Because the second problem, of course, we then have is that the costs at the moment look to be potentially upfront. And the benefits perhaps are a rather long way down the track. So unless and until the economic arguments are perhaps rather more firmly won so far as the public are concerned, and in particular, that some of the economic benefits that are to be delivered are perhaps somewhat more short term than currently seems to be the case, then I think you're always going to have a bit of a problem.